All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. I should probably get that logo out of my face so you guys can, well, not that you want to see me, but if you're catching the video cast, it seems a little awkward with me just kind of hovering behind our logo. But welcome to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. As always, I'm your host, Adam Smith, with Just the Tips Coaching. And I've got a really cool guest for you guys today, someone that I am certainly grateful to have as a colleague and to have on the show. And live from Minnesota, welcome Tim Swierczek. Hey, Tim.
Hey, everybody. How you doing today?
Well, I think we're doing okay. Although I'm really curious because we haven't had a whole lot of winter in Colorado yet. We did get some strings of storms, and you spend quite a bit of time here, so I know you know. But up until last week, the only snow on the mountains was the snow we made. There wasn't a whole lot going on, and it may very well still be a rough spring, and then obviously summer, forest fire season, so on and so forth. In Denver, down the road, down at, well, we're a mile high. I guess we're not at ski country altitude, but getting there. Certainly compared to Minneapolis.
Yeah.
It's like 66 degrees today. And in the high desert, that's a pretty nice day. Is it at least cold and snowy there?
It's cold but not snowy. Yeah, we same as you. We're pretty dry. We don't get as much snow as you would normally anyway. It's been a warm winter, but yesterday was like 14, right? So I didn't check today's temperature, but I think it was going to be in the 20s. So
okay, so that's cold.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not ridiculous, but it's cold.
You got to get your hats and booties or whatever the line in Groundhog Day is. Because it's cold out there.
Well, if most of your people are from Colorado, you probably get this. Like, we have times like in the middle of I wouldn't feel this way in the summer, but in the middle of the winter, I walk around without a jacket on. If it's in the 30s, I'll walk to and from my car without a jacket on. You know what I mean? If it's in the 20s, I definitely have a jacket
on. So my rule of thumb, 9 out of 10 days, is that if the high temp is going to breach 40, I'm going to wear shorts.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I don't mind the cold. I'll take 0 over 100 any day. And when you live in a place where it's so dry and arid, when it's cold, it's really not that cold. And when it's hot, it's really not that hot. Okay. But none of our audience really probably gives a shit about what I'm wearing today and whether or not Tim wears a jacket when he's going out to his car.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about Tim. And give us a little bit of background. What is it you do? How did you get started? What in the world made you think that being in the mortgage space would be a good idea? Is it you were dropped on your head a bunch as a kid or what?
Yeah. I think the getting started part may be a little interesting in that, like, I used to be a car salesman, right? And I'm talking like early 20s age range, right?
I thought you meant the 1920s.
Yeah.
Like, wow, you were one of the first.
No, but I do mean the 1990s to early 2000s.
You were in the late 1900s.
So I used to sell cars. I was actually quite good at it, and had friends all around the local area, the Twin Cities we call it, right? So there was a friend at another dealership who I used to talk to quite frequently, and one day he called me up. He says, "Tim, I'm quitting. I just bought my 10th rental property. I'm going to live off my rentals." And I came from a definitely lower middle class family. My dad was union. My mom was stay at home and eventually became like a waitress, right? So we're talking like not really high income. And to me, this was just a foreign concept. And that kind of, I didn't even really, now it seems silly that I didn't know it, but at the time I didn't even know that was possible, right? It just didn't. So that kind of opened my eyes to it. And at the same time, I met my now wife, and I realized that car sales was not a good family job, right? So I needed to look for something different, and I knew nothing about getting money. And I thought that was going to be the hard part, was getting money, right? That, and I'm good at math and stuff like that. So I thought, I really don't want to work weekends the rest of my life, so I don't really want to be a realtor. So why don't I go into mortgage? And that's kind of how I got into mortgage. Was interest in real estate investing, but not knowing how to get money.
Okay. just because I'm a car guy, what were you selling?
I sold Volkswagens. Yeah, brand new.
Okay. My list is a tech at a Volkswagen dealer, right? He's turning a wrench for a Audi Volkswagen dealership today, has been for years.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my son actually works at the same dealership I used to work at now. He details their cars. So
that's awesome. Okay. Yeah. And he owns a couple Volkswagens, which is also really cool. So yeah, neat stuff. Okay. So you've been doing this for a minute.
Yeah.
The mortgage work.
Since 2002.
Yeah. So there've certainly been some interesting periods. And I don't want to detract from anything that would define this as an interesting period, because I think it is. Mm-hmm. Right now, I find to be one of the most unique periods in the mortgage space. And I'm trying to think, it's probably about the same time frame, maybe a little longer, but I started my brokerage in 2005. We're coming up on 21 years here. And I had done loans for a few years prior to that for another company. Where did that time go? Decades, literally. And obviously what went on with the Great Recession was an interesting time. And what went on in the subprime space was an interesting time. And the inception of non-QM was very interesting. But I think right now I'm finding all kinds of really fun and unique things that we're getting to work on. I mean, obviously during the last boom, the pandemic, it was busy and it was fruitful, but it was vanilla. Every time the phone rang, you knew it was somebody that just wanted to lower their rate and payment. And you said, great, we'll get it done. We'll talk to you in 30 days. And you just move through the process. And now it's an enormous influx of commercial, of HECM, of HELOC, of all kinds of different things, and certainly non-QM, plenty of bank statement loans and DSR loans, and obviously DSR, or I think the residential world calls it DSCR.
Correct.
But we've been using debt service ratio calculations in the commercial space for decades.
Right.
So it's just that it's relatively new to the residential space, but still a very logical way to calculate how much money somebody could borrow and should pay for buying residential investment real estate. But I think the things that are really kind of adding to the complexity of it right now, certainly in the very, very conforming space, is the margin compression. We don't have any investors, and I'm a wholesale broker, so they're all wholesale mortgage banks that nobody's ever heard of, barring maybe Rocket and UWM.
Sure.
Even the consumer has heard those names. Although Rocket does retail, which is probably why they're still running Super Bowl ads and that kind of thing. But the market compression has made it to a point where these investors really can't afford to buy loans back. They don't have the margins for that. So it seems like every transaction is a lot more work than it used to be. And I'm not just talking about what went on during the pandemic, but even subsequent to that, it's just T's getting double crossed and I's getting double dotted. A lot of documentation straight from the Department of Redundancy Department, that kind of thing. But I think the biggest impact right now is that during that peak, during the pandemic, there were almost 1 million active federal mortgage licenses on the street. And now there are less than 100,000.
Wow, I didn't realize that was the number. I knew it was low, but
it's low. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, you and I interact with real estate agents on the regular every single day, and they're kind of used to it more as a revolving door. We know just based on our stats that 80% fail in the first 2 years, 85% in the first 5 years historically, or something along those lines. But there are always more people coming in. I never hear about new loan originators.
Well, I think I think you know this, and probably people who don't know our job don't really realize this, but if you were to print off Fannie Mae's guidelines and you printed off the whole package, it would be about 1,000 pages, right?
Yes.
If you cut it down just to stuff that has to do with loans and not servicing and appraisals and stuff, I think you're still pushing 400 and some pages. right around that number anyway, give or take a little, right? And then you take Freddie Mac, which is essentially the same, which makes it hard is it's only barely different. But those differences matter tremendously.
Absolutely.
Like they kill deals if you don't know them. And then you add FHA on top, VA, USDA, and any other lender out there, and you can't do this part-time. Whereas you could be a realtor and you could work at, a corporate job during the day, and you could help someone at night, and you're not going to be doing your clients necessarily a disservice. But we would do ourselves a disservice if we're not constantly keeping up, right?
Yeah, I would be willing to bet that those of us that are left are full-time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have any doubts.
Yeah, for sure. But that's the major difference, right? In terms of, or one of the major differences between the two, and why we don't have a revolving door, because it's actually a pretty big barrier to entry. I would think that for most people, it takes 3 to 5 years to get competent at our job, right? I mean, you're really screwing stuff up for the first year, right? 2 years.
Yeah, hopefully you have some help to pull your ass out of the fire when you do.
Yeah.
No question. And I've seen a handful of people. I even mentored a client's kid last year, maybe the year before, who thought he wanted to get into this, and he failed the exam 3 times. And of course, if you do that, you can't take it for a year.
Right.
That's a long time to go without a career path. So he went down a different path. But yeah, I don't really know of new loan originators.
Right. I don't know many. I see some here and there in coaching programs, right? But yeah, I think it's a hard job to get into, which makes it interesting to see how that will continue. I think AI is going to take up some of our job in the near future, but I don't know that it's going to do it right away. I think it's going to be slow over time, and I think it will come last to complex and purchase deals, right? I think it's refi first, right? Is kind of what you'd expect.
Maybe. And I do think that that's an interesting subject. And since we do talk about it on the podcast quite a bit, and we've been doing quite a bit in the way of our weekly video blog, The Little Tip, on AI, let's have that conversation.
Okay.
Because I do think that's interesting. And we do run our coaching clients through some AI modules. And it's pretty straightforward shit. I'm going to give them a hard time about the cartoon action figure and the photo with the giant fucking candy cane. Right?
And that is not what I'm talking about replacing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think is really important to understand, if you're in that space, mortgages, real estate, insurance, financial planning, whatever, where you're dealing directly with the consumer, there are a couple of inherent issues. One is that none of us can tell what's real anymore. So, and even when we walk outside the door, I'm not even sure what's real anymore, but certainly when I'm on the computer. So I think a lot of authenticity and transparency is still very, very valuable. I tell our coaching clients that AI is not going to take your job, but that the people using AI are going to take your job. And that's probably true. And for people our age and beyond, and there are plenty of us in the mortgage space and certainly in the real estate space, you guys have got to understand that if you are seeing new competition, fresh faces, as real estate agents, certainly more common, but with loan originators as well, that they were basically born with these tools. They came out of the womb with a smartphone.
Right.
We didn't have that. We've had to kind of adopt and implement as we go. So if you're not doing that, you're behind the ball. So I do have our clients put together the perfect client avatar. Who do they want to work with? And you've got to teach your AI a lot about you in order to generate that. And then once you've done that, you can obviously use AI to help you figure out how to get in front of those people. What social media platforms are they on? What time of day are they going to be on? What kind of content do they want to see, hear, read, watch? Those sorts of things. Because it's always got to be audience centric. So let's use AI to help us identify that. Right? But the biggest issues I see are people still treating it like a search engine, like a data set. That you're asking ChatGPT the same shit you'd ask Google is not what it's there for. And I also still see a lot of people creating problems that they didn't have for AI to solve, rather than using AI to solve the problems they do have, that they do need to solve. Those kinds of things. And I can't figure out where that mental block is. When it comes to the data set versus the process that we're using AI like Google, that one I can figure out. And the analogy I like is Google Maps.
Okay.
And you get in the car and you tell it where you need to go, and it takes you there. And it knows everything along the way. What turns you're going to take, where the traffic signals and stop signs are, where there are traffic jams and where there are speed traps, and all the businesses along the way and all the addresses and on and on. It's really robust, but it's just a data set. Now, because I've taught my Gemini, I'm a Gemini user, not a ChatGPT user, although I do still look at and use Manus, Claude, Meta, a lot of different, I'll use AI.com when that becomes available, those kinds of things. But I can get into Gemini and say, hey, I've got to get to this closing at 2:00. I need gas. I'm hungry. And I got to go to the dry cleaner, right? And it'll say, well, you can get gas before the closing if you go here and leave now. You're not going to have time to eat unless it's gas station sushi. You don't want to eat that, and you can't because you're on a keto diet, so you can't have the rice. So you're going to have to wait, and you absolutely can't do the dry cleaning beforehand, but good news, they're open till 6, whatever it is. So the process is really the AI.
Yeah.
Right? You want to know the theory of relativity, look it up. You want to know how Einstein came up with it, that's different. So I'm still seeing a lot of people struggle to understand the difference between the data set and the process. Yeah, that's a tough one, but give us some idea of what you're using it for.
Oh, personally, I mean, I use a lot of it for the basic stuff, just smoothing out emails that, I need to communicate sensitive information. And I don't mean even like private data. I mean like, something that's less than perfect. I use it for that, right? Which I know is
we all know what you're getting at.
Yeah, I know that's a real low level use, but I found that very useful.
No, I don't think that's true. I think using it to hone your writing skills, and if you're giving it all your past writing, I have the real estate agents upload all their previous listing descriptions that they've written.
Okay, yeah.
Because they're using it for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so use it for that, but teach it how you write them yourself.
Sure, and I've done that, yeah. And, and that's actually, I'm tied into ChatGPT, and from using other ones, I'm not sure it's even my favorite, but it's trained on me so well. It writes like me. It doesn't use dashes. It doesn't use emojis. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have icons all over the place, but it smooths out and just it says what I want to say better than I would say it if I just typed it out, right? So I use it for a lot of that. As you know, I work with a lot of real estate investors. And so maybe my most complicated use case to this point is I came up with this theory a few years ago, not a theory, a plan of analyzing real estate that's different than most. Most people, even a consumer, I would say, could use this strategy. And that is they normally look at properties when they come on the MLS, right? Like, hey, I'm going to look at this property and I'm going to figure out if I want to buy it, but I'm only looking at active properties. Well, for a real estate investor in particular, if you want to see, if you want to make a choice on a property, you can't wait until it's on the market to know what a good deal is in that market. So what we do is we look at the last year's worth of data of all the sales in the area we want to look in. Like, for example, duplexes in Minneapolis, right? And there might be, I can tell you there's 864 last year in the last 12 months in that market. I know that because I've done the research and I use AI to help me filter through the data. And to be perfectly blunt, and you probably know this, I mean, I did it last year and it was a year ago. It was very faulty and really I didn't care for the result. This year, the result took a lot less time. I retrained the model over my last year's model and it was much better. And I'm still kind of going through it. So I'm looking for problems, but now when someone looks at a real estate transaction, they can look at the trends, right? Because if you look at one property at a time, it's very random, right? You might get a high-end property in one neighborhood, a low-end property in another, a property out of your price range in another, and it's just way too random. This allows you to look at 800 transactions and look for for trends, right? And that I find very valuable.
Okay. I'm going to disagree with the last thing you said prior to that about it being better at writing than you.
Okay.
But I think you would be just as good, but it might take you several drafts and a lot of fine tuning, that kind of thing. So here's one of these where we can use AI to solve a problem that we do have.
Yeah.
And use it to help expedite, to speed up our process, those kinds of things. I think you could do it.
Yeah.
But could you do it as quickly? Absolutely not. It would take you time. You'd go through a few drafts, you'd make adjustments, you'd read it out loud, you'd check for typos, yada, yada. And AI sped up that process.
Yeah.
So there, boys and girls, there's a great example of where you can use AI to solve a problem that you do have instead of creating problems that you don't have and don't need in order for AI to solve. And I still see a lot of that.
And for other, I guess I'm sure loan officers use this, and maybe even some realtors do, but I have also used it to track, to predict, like, for example, if someone bought a property 2 years ago and they want to refinance, tell me based on MLS data what the likely new appraisal value will be based on appreciation in that market. And I found it to be extraordinarily accurate. I don't know if I trained it really well or not, but like I'm getting within a few $1,000s, often, I wouldn't say every time, but actually most of the time,
That's fantastic. And you're using ChatGPT for that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's, how they have their little, they don't call them agents projects, right? So I have a project for that. I have a project for, and I've used it in Denver and I've used it in Minnesota and used it a couple different places to figure out values. Cause like you said, I go to Denver quite a bit. And so I'm a fan of the area. And if I have a reason to look something up,
and you have real estate here.
I do. I own property there. Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
Sorry, we don't have more snow. I really, I swear. I know you'd be out here skiing if we did.
Well, I'll be out there in a couple weeks, and I was a few Super Bowl weekend. I was out there, so I still like to ski. I'll still go, but
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get some more between now and your next visit. That would really, really be good. I do think that for this particular project, Claude would be amazing.
Okay.
I cannot remember the one that Matt Broderick was promoting during the Super Bowl. I can never remember the name. But it seems like that might be a really good fit for those of you that want to implement AI in this kind of evaluation formula. And you're probably going to see better results just because it's looking in multiple places than you're going to see. Well, certainly with Zillow. Don't get me started. We all know that A in Zillow stands for accuracy. Right. So that's a big one. But even with Black Knight, which is feeding into HomeBot, and a lot of us are using that, or Home IQ, it's GenSpark is the AI that is supposed to, it's just business related. But it's supposed to be a really solid tool for, I can't even figure out everything that they provide. They do slides, of course, but yeah, you're all in one super agent AI workspace. Phone calls, presentations, videos, deep research, which would certainly fall along those lines.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of things that could be going on with research, task execution, certainly content creation, those sorts of things that would be available through GenSpark as well. It looks like they're going to have a really solid AI platform on their hands. Although, is there anything we're really using anytime we get in front of the computer, pull out our phones that doesn't have some kind of artificial intelligence running it in the background these days? We know Meta does. We know Google does. The software that you and I are using right now does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
you sometimes you find it amazing, and sometimes you find it kind of underwhelming and in the way, right? It's like, Gmail right now, their help writing emails to me personally is getting in my way. I don't like it. The / help me do my email. Well, guess what? I have another program that uses that same / and I like that program more.
Okay.
So
okay. So you're actually knocking one out of the way that is appearing every time you want help and replacing it with a better one.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever, it is what it is. Like first world problems, right?
Yeah, I guess we could define them that way. Certainly, right now, I think we're still in a place in the world where we're waiting on the third world to kind of even develop into the smartphone age, let alone what we're seeing as AI. And I used to joke that the rise of the machines, as it were, was really just me getting into a fist fight with the Roomba over a Cheeto. But this is really going places, and it's going really fast.
Yeah.
I hope people adopt and implement and then buckle up for the ride, because I think this is going to make some tremendous changes for the better in how we do our work if we're actually doing the work.
And you got to be smart enough now to know when it's wrong, right? I mean, like that's the other thing is you mentioned it, using it like a couple of use cases I've seen, using it like a search engine just has major flaws right now, right? I'm thinking loan guidelines specifically. I've had people come up to me, or I've even searched loan guidelines because I wanted something quick, and I used that, and I knew the answer was wrong. I was like, oh, I know this isn't correct. I know what I'm supposed to be seeing. I just was looking for particular wording, and I know this is incorrect, right? So it will pull bad data all the time. And it gives bad advice. I had a real estate investor come to me and he said, well, ChatGPT tells me I should do this. And I was like, well, ChatGPT is going to make you really poor on this deal, and here's why, right? And I could go through every reason why. So there's still a level of you need to be smarter than ChatGPT at this moment. Use it to speed things up, but don't treat it as gospel.
Well, during the pandemic, we let computers buy houses. Zillow did a ton of it. And the companies that did that really took a bath.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
so that we didn't learn from that is a little astounding to me. But okay. Yes, please don't use ChatGPT to get solid advice on specific real estate investments, please.
Yeah. Hey, Adam, you said something earlier. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind covering it for a few minutes. You mentioned how you felt like deals were more difficult now. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I actually see a lot of that in our market. We see every winter, or when the market slows down in general, we see more hard deals, and that has a human element to it, right? That would be like realtors, when they don't have a commission, or when they have lots of business, they don't have time to deal with people who have high needs, high touch, right? But as things slow down, they start saying, hey, Adam, remember this problem you have, let's work on it together, right? And they push these harder deals on us. But also, you mentioned the non-QM space, and I think that because there are actual legitimate products to get hard deals done, we see more hard deals, and we can take them seriously, right?
Definitely.
So I was just kind of curious in your thoughts before I go there. One use case I can think of right now is like a couple years ago, if someone would have come to me and said I was self-employed for less than 2 years, I basically would have had to say to them, sorry, you have to wait 2 years, right? Like I just became self-employed a year ago. That answer would be, I'm sorry, you need to wait another year. Now that's not true, right? And it creates these hard deals. They're sometimes very complicated to work on, but also kind of fun. So tell me about your thoughts around that issue, and maybe we can kind of help some people out today.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. Although I don't know that necessarily describing these as hard deals is the right handle, the right description. I think that they do require more work. I think that they do require more creativity, but I do think that that usually means that they are a little more fun and a little more satisfying.
Totally agree. Yep.
Okay.
And I guess by hard, I guess I mean maybe complex or they're not better, right? I mean, it's certainly not an assembly line process compared to a conventional loan or those vanilla deals you were talking about several years ago.
Yeah. And I think that the eye opener for me was last year. One of these wholesale investors we work with sent me an award for being like their top DPA guy. Sorry, down payment assistance, for those of you that aren't used to all of our anagrams. And I was like, well, that's really not business that I focused on. So how is that possible? How did that actually come to pass? And I started backtracking through the data, and I realized that I'm now doing deals for clients' kids and even grandkids. And obviously having a young audience usually means that we're not, buying $1 million homes with 20% down.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't have the capital yet. We don't have the borrowing power yet. We just haven't had the opportunity in our lives to build that up. So I really started looking long and hard at it, because I would never choose to make a career out of DPA work. They're more difficult deals. They're not $1 million loans, these kinds of things. And of course, you help everybody that you can, right? I mean, that's just old Zig Ziglar shit, right? Help as many people as you can, get what they want, and you'll get what you want. And you can really maintain a single purpose focus on your business that way if you just help people, just take good care of people. So it really was kind of eye-opening, and I was like, well, those are usually more difficult transactions, so it wouldn't be something that I would normally want to jump through the hoops of. It's not something where I would market that way. I wouldn't promote that we have this, down payment assistance award hanging on the wall in the office, that kind of thing, that we're a top down payment assistance mortgage originator. But I think that the workload is certainly increased, and I think that the need to be knowledgeable in what we're doing has increased.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say overall, the transactions are a lot more fun than they were during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, they're much more interesting, and I guess for people who don't really kind of understand, and you being a broker, you probably see this maybe even more than me, because the type of lending I do, they try to standardize non-standardized things, right? Whereas you're just I wouldn't want to say Wild West, but certainly more raw to the guidelines, right? Anyway, for those who don't kind of really understand, is the conventional loans, all that's all standardized. I mean, Minnesota, Colorado, the guidelines are the same. They're nationwide guidelines.
Yep.
But on these other loan products, they're per lender. So I could go to 5 different lenders, and on one issue, it's possible that they would have 5 different interpretations of a particular part of a guideline, and I might need one of those to get this deal done, right? So so there's a lot more research involved. There's a lot more, fitting the puzzle pieces together. And you're right. I find it amazing. Really, it's what keeps me excited, right? I mean, it's not very exciting to do a vanilla deal after you've done thousands of them like you and I have,
Literally.
Yeah,
that is absolutely the best way I've heard it described so far. Yeah,
fair enough.
And don't get me wrong, it's not that we're not going to do them, and we understand that it's still the same end result. You've got to be protecting your clients' dollars. You've got to be making moves that are going to be in their financial best interest, and not necessarily just at closing, which a lot of people lose sight of, especially when we're talking about the big cubicle farm type of mortgage origination that goes on, because it's really just who's got the best rate and lowest cost. And that's not really what this is about. Because in my mind, the interest rate's mostly an arbitrary number. What's best for your dollars is going to be far more important to me, and not just at time of transaction. What is this going to look like for you in a year, and 3, and 5? And are you really doing this in a manner that is not only protecting them down the road? And I even had one, it's been a couple in the last week, but one that was really, really relevant to me, because I've got a client that did a bridge in order to purchase. The purchase is now getting refinanced. They want to throw a ton of money at the balance because they sold the old house, right? It makes sense to me. They're very monthly payment centric. And I said, hey, I don't have a problem doing your loan this way, but I do want you to understand that if you keep that cash and go put it somewhere that's going to earn cash, you can do that. It'll be a compound interest. You're still going to get the bigger tax deduction, and you can change your mind. If you decide at some point that you want to throw money at your loan balance, we'll recast the loan. I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
If you decide that you want to put $100,000 into home equity, which has a 0 rate of return, right? The real estate market doesn't care what you owe on your house.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have to pay me to get it back.
Yeah.
So let's not slam any doors in your own face. And if I'm in a position where I'm comfortable talking myself out of a job, then I think that helps me stay focused on what's best for their dollars.
So true. And I see a lot of that, right? It's really easy for a consumer to focus on a few main things, right? But it doesn't really necessarily always take the big picture in mind. They forget, for example, that they have high interest credit card debt, yet they want to put, I don't know, call it 20% down or 25% down or whatever the number might be. It's kind of irrelevant, more than the minimum, yet they're carrying this other debt, which far exceeds the cost.
Oh, yeah. It's a 20%. There's no tax deduction. There's no tangible good to go with it. There's no appreciating asset. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. See it all the time.
Yep.
No question. But when was the last time you actually heard a consumer say that they know what a blended rate is? With their extra
I'm at a loss. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, never. If a consumer actually knew what they were paying in interest across their entire debt load would blow my mind.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting use case for AI. I haven't ever figured that out across my whole life, right? That's, I think, a very interesting thing, Adam, that we should that's something we can start incorporating, is throwing all of their debt in and figuring out what their blended rate is. I've used AI for blended rate before, and it did work pretty good. Not pretty good. It worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a interesting use case, particularly when it comes to refis. But even purchases, like I said, it is not automatic that you should put down 20%. For some people, they should put down that or more. I mean, I think it varies, but absolutely, it depends on your situation, how you're investing, where you're, how close you are to retirement even, I think is at least a factor for some people. If you've got a healthy retirement coming and you're going to be able to afford the payment, maybe put less down and, like you were saying, and, I don't know, if you're in a pretty tight income, then maybe you need that payment to be low. I don't, so.
Yeah. Well, and here, this is just more fodder for the case that every situation is unique.
Yeah.
That you've got to get into the weeds on it these days. You've really got to deconstruct and analyze and make sure that you are satisfying a client's needs to the very best of your ability.
Absolutely.
To the very best of the industry's ability. So,
absolutely. And there's a lot of stuff out there to do that, right? There are a lot of tools. And
there are.
I think finding someone who knows what they're doing that's not in one of those cubicle farms, as you mentioned, is a very good first step.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, thank you.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm so glad that you were able to come on. Hadn't seen you in a minute. In fact, I was thinking I might even mention I will mention it, but that we do this annual event, the Mile High Mastermind, and you've even seen a couple of them.
Yep, absolutely.
You've actually been here and participated in all of that hootenanny.
Absolutely. And I'll be in your lovely state multiple times. In 2 weeks, I'll be there. I've already got a concert planned for August, so I'll be around. So we should catch up and hang out.
We will. All right. Well, thank you for doing it. I know carving out this kind of time on a Monday morning is not an easy task. And for the rest of you watching or listening live or in syndication, I see Ben Lavender was watching, by the way. Yeah. So hi, Ben. And for the rest of you, however, you can catch new episodes of How I Met Your Mortgage on our video cast, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube on Mondays at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern, and the podcast goes up on Wednesdays on Amazon, Apple, and Spotify. And if you want to see the other things, you want to catch past episodes, or you want to catch the video blog, our weekly little tip, I've written a couple of books on this subject. We do this annual event. Go check out justthetipscoaching.com. You'll find all that stuff. Other than that, we'll be back next week with another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. Tim, thank you again for doing it. Don't run off just yet. I'm going to run our extra, and I'll give you a few bits and pieces of what we'll do with all of this content between now and then. All right. I'll talk to you soon. And for the rest of you, thanks for watching or listening live or in syndication, and we'll see you next time.